Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. So maybe you can get started by telling us, who you are and your journey in life so far.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm Pelle Braendgaard. I'm the CEO of Notabene, a fairly new company. We've been around for a year. I'm Danish. I've been living all over the world, including a stint in Kenya, where I was for a while. I was involved with the internet since fairly early days, or the early days of the web, I should say. So I was the first webmaster at Alta Vista, the search engine back in the 90s. And during the dot-com period, I got into cryptography and particularly the financial applications for it. So I was pretty early involved with that particular space, and on payment technologies, legal contracts, company management, those kinds of things using cryptography. This was pre-blockchain, so it wasn't blockchain, but it was using cryptography, digital signatures, those kinds of things. Also spent time working with banks such as Deutsche Bank in London and a bank in Denmark as well. But I've been very interested. So when Bitcoin came, I was excited to see that here is a real practical version, practical decentralized solution for payments, and it was very exciting to see. So started playing with it initially, and then started applying some of the knowledge that I already had in the space on trying to build applications on top of Bitcoin. With a particular interest, had seen, like so many other people, I'd seen the growth of M-Pesa and 15 whatever years ago it was that they started, and was quite excited about Kenya, about what was going on and how Kenyans had really created a completely new, innovative kind of way of looking at payments in many ways from a ground up. And I thought, oh, well, Bitcoin would probably work well in this particular sphere. So, and I'd always been interested in applications for crypto technology for payments in, around the developing world, where I'd been spending a lot of time in Latin America and the Caribbean before, and I've been working on projects there. I went to Kenya, started Kipochi in, I think, 2013, but we may even have started 2012. I can't 100% remember right now. Yeah.
Now, you saw an opportunity in Kenya. You saw M-Pesa getting adopted and its use case growing. I imagine you got interested in Kenya at that point and decided to build Kipochi in Kenya.
Yeah. So I partnered with a company that already had a pretty strong presence in Kenya, and they were also excited by the opportunities there. They were working with Airtel at the moment, at that particular time. And so I joined with them, and they had offices in Kenya. They had a team of developers in Kenya, had a good local presence. It wasn't just, a bunch of people in Silicon Valley trying to push tech into Kenya. So it was good. I got a good intro in there, and I've been looking at the ideas of agency banking in the past, or agents for doing for payments in the past. I've been working on a system called Virax in Panama, from probably 2002 to 2004, which was a little bit Ripple-like, if you will. But we were working at setting up a bunch of agencies throughout Central America to be able to do payments. So I was familiar with the idea of agents, and I always thought that it's a great decentralized way of doing it. And while M-Pesa, of course, is pretty centralized. The agency model isn't, and I was excited to see what we could do with that, with Bitcoin on the streets of Nairobi and elsewhere.
Now, maybe you can give us a brief on how Kipochi worked.
So it was well, I don't know how simple it was, but we had the main version of it was a web-based wallet. So it was a very simple mobile web wallet. Keys were managed on a server. Keys were kind of split between different areas. So there was a transaction processing server, and then there was a phone authentication server that went in and authenticated a key and returned a key to the mobile web browser. And that with that, you were able to do very simple Bitcoin transactions. It was not the most advanced version of it, of a Bitcoin wallet, because it was designed to operate in a very low level environment. We also did a prototype, a working prototype of a USSD Bitcoin wallet using the same technology. USSD, unfortunately, is not quite as decentralized as web, but we thought that it would be okay to take certain shortcuts, in the name of pragmatism, to get the technology out to more people. But of course, the problem with USSD is that you need access to a mobile operator's network to be able to do this. So we were actually operating on Airtel, and we had a hidden USSD code to be able to access Kipochi. But it was mainly for testing, proof of concept, those kinds of things. We only did a couple of Bitcoin transactions on it.
During those early stages, I believe there wasn't a lot of people, or at least there wasn't anybody who was doing what you're doing, right? I think M-Pesa would come a bit later. Yeah. Am I right?
Yeah, so we started, I first went to Kenya in I think May 2013, and M-Pesa started a bit afterwards. They were starting to get the team ready around that time, and I know Elizabeth Rosiello from M-Pesa very well from back then. There were a few other crypto interested people in Kenya at the time, and we were the first to try to do a wallet. We didn't even really want to be an exchange at all, but for proof of concept, also we did a M-Pesa integration using Kopo. And it was never meant to be a production thing, because we wanted to work with M-Pesa, for example, to do that aspect of it. But I announced it at a conference in London, and that we had been doing M-Pesa transactions to Bitcoin. And I think we'd probably done about 12 or so, not a lot. It was just testing. And all of a sudden our Kopo account was closed down, and we didn't know what was going on. And it turns out that the international press buzz around what we were doing had trickled up to Vodafone in London, who sent a message to Safaricom, who figured out that this was done via Kopo and eventually got us shut down. So this happened about a week or so after this conference and all the press buzz that we had around.
Wow. I know you have a long story to tell about that. Now, during this time when you are, launching or just testing out Kipochi, would you know, for example, how many people were already interacting with the product? And maybe, the transaction volumes around that time?
Very little, very few. I mean, to be honest, there was not a lot of people. I don't have the specific numbers. But Bitcoin was very, very new, so not a lot of people knew knew about it at the time. We did a few events at I forget the name of it, but a big co-working space.
iHub.
Yes, at iHub. Yeah. So we did a couple events there, and there was some interest. And I kept when we actually heard that there are probably more users than we thought of it, but it was. I mean, it was available. You could use it. You could generate an address, and we could probably have had better stats on it. We didn't really have that good metrics on it at the time. Also, we were trying really to, be more private around it. But our goal really was to. I mean, we were operational for I think a year or so after Safaricom shut down the M-Pesa hub. So people were finding Bitcoin, buying Bitcoin, sending it to the Kipochi wallets and sending it off, those kinds of things. But I don't think there was huge amounts of people using it.
All right. Now, tell us now what happened now really with Safaricom. There have been so many stories about that, because BitPesa would later on come and get shut down. I remember at that time I was actually doing some media work for BitPesa when that happened. It was about 2015. But I know it goes back to your time at Kipochi. So maybe, give us a bit of history on, how all that drama, unfolded.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, not sitting within the offices of Safaricom, we can guess a lot of things what happened, but I heard some things that, I heard that the order to shut us down came from London and not from the Safaricom office, because the Safaricom offices themselves, I mean, they did not know about us, did not know about Bitcoin at that point. So it was probably someone who read it in the Financial Times or Wired or something like that in UK who who sent the office down to Safaricom. What are you guys playing at, right? But later on, we kept trying to have conversations with them, and this was around the same time where CBK was really starting to figure out, to deal with Safaricom, deal with M-Pesa, because of course they were a monopoly, and of course they were like even though everyone else were trying to create M-Pesa competitors at the time, it's really difficult to push someone like M-Pesa off. So the regulators were very worried about M-Pesa. And at the same time, so M-Pesa were, of course, worried about the regulators, but they're also worrying about the competitive landscape. They did not. It was very clear they did not want any competition. I don't know if they do yet, but at least back then they didn't do cross country. Like you couldn't send M-Pesa like from Kenya to Tanzania or anything like that. And that's where we thought that could be our differentiator, right? So with Kipochi, but they probably had plans around that themselves, and again, they may have that service now. I don't know.
Yeah. In fact, I think they've already partnered with a couple of companies to enable international transfers. Yeah.
So, but they're typical kind of the typical. Big company that builds a market, they own the market, they don't want to lose control of the market, and rightfully so. They're paranoid about it, and it would probably help them to read some of the traditional Silicon Valley innovation books, like The Innovator's Dilemma and those kinds of things, because at some point they will be knocked off, and I would expect it will be something crypto related that knocks them off, and it'll be something that they can't control. where sometimes it's better to allow things on your system so whatever knocks you off is controlled by you yourself, right? And that's like the typical Silicon Valley approach to this. And I don't know how much of a plan they have for that, or whether they think they're just going to be able to continue doing what they've done so far.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I have to agree with that. A lot of people say they've been the biggest hurdle to, the growth of the space.
Yeah.
M-Pesa is a 14, 15-year-old technology now.
Yeah.
For how long is it going to last?
Yeah.
So, and I think that is the problem that, even 7, 8 years later, I think it's the problem that still faces the crypto space in Kenya. The barrier to enter the market is basically controlled by one large entity. So getting in, you either have to get in via mobile phone, and you really cannot integrate any crypto product into the market. So now I know that after Kipochi, next in line was BitPesa. There was a long legal battle between Safaricom and BitPesa, which would later involve CBK. I don't know, what's your take on, what culminated after that?
I always actually kind of liked CBK. I thought, like, when we got I remember once I was like sitting in typical horrible Nairobi traffic, and I got an email in with a official PDF letter from the CBK, and I was like, oh shit, what does this mean? Am I in trouble? But it's, so we got a meeting with them, and I liked everyone I interacted with at the CBK at that particular point. I remember I can't remember the name of the person I was speaking with, but he seemed very open to things, like to the technology, and he had sent a couple of I believe graduate students from not sure what university, but sent them to grill me. So they grilled me for like 3 or 4 hours on Bitcoin. Why isn't this just for drug dealing? How come there's only 21 million coins? All of these kinds of things. I was just grilled nonstop by these economics graduate students, and they were great. They were like, it was fun. I felt like we had a good conversation with them there. So I don't know what has happened afterwards, but I mean, CBK historically have been open to innovation, and they have been protecting, they allowed M-Pesa to exist where many other central banks wouldn't have done that. And I think that was an important part of it. And regardless of what has happened since then, we shouldn't forget that, right? That they were a very innovative bank, at least at one point. And they were able to also push back on some of the international pressure for KYC and those kinds of things, in the interest of Kenyans and in the interest of creating this technology and allowing this technology to happen that wouldn't have happened in many other countries. And so I don't know exactly what happened afterwards. I hear a lot of stories about lots of politics, this, that, and the other thing, but I don't know anything firsthand about it. And maybe they made a deal with Safaricom. You're forced to open up some particular things, but then we'll help protect you against something like Bitcoin. I don't know. I have no information about this, but you could definitely spend a lot of time sitting around drinking Tuskers, thinking about why, and what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the reason why we keep going back to, your experiences and BitPesa experiences is because I think it has pretty much shaped the space of crypto up to now in Kenya. Everybody who always talks about, regulation, they always take you back to, what happened to BitPesa, what happened to Kipochi. So I think that bit of history is good for, the space right now, which is trying to evolve. There are so many brands that want to get into the space, but regulation continues to be a major hurdle for a lot of these brands. So, I mean, from your experience so far, I know it's a couple of years since that happened, but what would you say um has costs, central banks or say CBK maintain the same stand, 5, 6, 7 years later, because it's still the same stand now, despite the huge market growth than when it was, when you started with Kipochi.
I mean, I can't help think that they are trying to protect some part of the market, and they don't necessarily understand, how technological innovation and market innovation happens. And they should understand, because they saw this with BitPesa, and I mean, not BitPesa, with M-Pesa, sorry. And I mean, one detail is, like, the CBK told me back then in 2013, they told me that we can continue to do what we want within Kenya. So CBK did not ban us. It was Safaricom that shut us down, right? Shut down the M-Pesa link that we had. But Safaricom did not. I mean, CBK did not ban us. They said, we don't have time to really think a lot about this, because we have M-Pesa to worry about. And M-Pesa is where we're spending all of our time. That's what we're worrying about. So please don't do anything stupid. That's really what they told us, right? And I thought it was nice. It was like, just continue work. Don't do anything really, really stupid. Essentially, don't get into creating, like, dark drug markets or whatever in Kenya or anything like that, and just continue with the approach that we were taking. And they were fine with it at that point. But obviously something happened since then, because, like a year or two later, then BitPesa was hit by them, and with an actual ban eventually, is my understanding. So something happened there, and I don't know if it was something as part of negotiation with M-Pesa. I mean, with Safaricom, not sure. But they, in an ideal world, they would be they would understand and, like, look at the benefit to Kenya. And I think there's a lot of benefits to Kenya in this technology. And so far, it seems like they have been better at dealing with external companies coming down, trying to do fintech and those kinds of things, that they have been allowing, homegrown entrepreneurs. And I'm not trying to say that we were a homegrown Kenyan entrepreneur. Of course we weren't. We came from abroad. But the great thing about crypto is that it allows small startups in Kenya to build things. It allows people to build tools, for example, to enable the chamas and those kinds of things, which none of the Silicon Valley companies, they understand or care about, right? So you can see Libra, those kinds of people coming down, spending a lot of money, working with African central banks, trying to get licenses, these kinds of things. But these companies, they don't care about about Kenyans. They care about like this, you know, a cartoon version of a poor African without having an understanding about what's actually going on, right? And this is where my time in Kenya was great, because I got to meet a lot of actual Kenyans and understand, and like, you know, about these kinds of things, and also understand very quickly that this is not about me coming in trying to show anyone how to do anything. This is about, I can focus on the technology, but the applications, those kinds of things, that has to come out of Kenya itself, right? And so I can come with tech, but how that tech is used, that's not up to me, right? So one of the things that we're doing with our current company is really taking a somewhat similar approach, where we focused on the regulatory compliance aspect. So really trying to make it easy for crypto companies to get regulatory compliant around the world. And there are some global guidelines that from FATF or you know, the Financial Action Task Force, that explain how companies should, not how countries should go about regulating crypto businesses. Of course, CBK is still not, you know, they seem to have taken the approach of let's just ban it, is my understanding, right? Like banning crypto businesses. But FATF actually brings a framework that's very easy to go in and implement. And what we do is we provide the technology that allows businesses to be able to do that. And again, what we're doing is that we're providing tools for people to build these kind of applications in a regulatory compliant way. And it's unfortunate if Kenya continues, like if the CBK continues this approach on just protecting M-Pesa, because Kenya will, in that case, probably go from being like, you know, one of the leading innovators in fintech around Africa, if not the world, to being a backwater. That's my view. And other countries like Uganda, Tanzania, and places like that, Rwanda may move ahead much quicker.
All right. I mean, yes, I do have to agree with you on that. So, in fact, in some aspects already, I would say some of these countries are already moving much faster, because of that, that idea that maybe, you know, we need to protect M-Pesa, we need to protect that product. So, you know, like I said, it's a 15-year-old technology, and it's not going to last here forever. Now, my next question was around, you know, you've already touched on what you're doing. Are you also looking at servicing the African continent, or possibly even Kenya again, or are you done with Africa and Kenya?
No, I'm definitely not done with Africa. We actually have a couple of clients in Nigeria, and even though the central bank in Nigeria just came out with their rules the other day, at least there's a very, very active crypto market in Nigeria, right? And it seems like people in parliament have been pushing back, from my understanding. I haven't really read, gone into a lot of detail on it, but we definitely want to provide solutions for companies in the African market. And one of our customers is actually Luno. So Luno are of course a very, very popular wallet in Africa. So we're working with them also. They are headquartered in Singapore. So right now we're working with a lot of Singaporean companies. But Luno are taking a very, very strong, we need to be out in front of the regulation kind of way of looking at it. So they're using our technology, and others are looking at using us as well. We've been in talk with several companies in South Africa and Nigeria as well. So far, no one in Kenya. I don't really even know who's currently working on these aspects in Kenya, but we're definitely open to talk with companies in Kenya, East Africa. At some point, hopefully, I can get to Kenya again. I really enjoyed my time in Kenya, and have a big need for some nyama choma, and would really like to.
Yeah, I guess that never gets old.
No.
Yeah. All right, now, Pele, just taking you back, in 2013, 2014, according to one statistic, with Bitpesa, for example, they said they had about 4,000 users right before, their connection with Safaricom was cut off. When you look at today, the market, one company alone, Paxful, says they onboarded about 60,000 people in 2020 alone and moved about $40 million in 2020. When you look at that and you compare, during the Kipochi days, would you have envisioned or seen that growth to what it is right now?
Yeah, I always believe that Bitcoin is going to take over and change the traditional financial system, and it's going to go first places where people have a need for it. So, for example, if you don't have access to good investment products, then why not? Isn't it better to use something like Bitcoin, where you actually have an opportunity to grow, than just keeping the money, keeping the dollar bills under your mattress or in your M-Pesa in your M-Pesa account. There are better ways of doing this, and like Bitcoin offers an opportunity. Bitcoin, Ethereum, DeFi offers great opportunities for Africa, for the world, really. And we believe that in my company, and so does our investors, that Bitcoin and public blockchains are going to form a part of pretty much every major financial institution in about 5 years' time. And there's a lot of things that need to be built before that, but we're on the way there. There's a lot of new infrastructure companies where we're one of them. So we handle one aspect of the infrastructure, such as figuring out who the counterparty is to a transaction, which is something we don't have on Bitcoin. So essentially, who am I sending? Who am I paying? Actually, it's important for most people to know who they're paying, unless you're right in front of them. So we handle that aspect of it. There's a lot of other companies solving issues in this space, but most large banks worldwide are actively investing in the space, and we're talking with lots of banks. We're talking with lots of international fintechs. It's not just crypto companies anymore. This space is growing, and I remember I very clearly remember once at some event, Africa Coin, I think in iHub, where there was someone from MasterCard, who was arguing, "Oh, this will never be anything," and I like, well, of course it of course this will be something, because the traditional systems are broken. M-Pesa survived because the traditional banks, M-Pesa came because the traditional banks were broken the way they did things, right? And it was a massive innovation over that. But M-Pesa is also broken, right? So you need to replace a lot of the underlying technology. And a lot of this underlying technology is being replaced now. So which is why you're seeing a lot of banks really investing heavily in it. So, I'm never going to make price predictions or anything like that, but we're only just seeing the beginning right now of it. And we've gotten to the point, the reason that the regulators, the reason like FATF like internationally, or FinCEN in the US are taking this very serious, is because they can see the benefits of blockchain technology. They can see the benefits of Bitcoin. There's a lot of transparency there that you don't get in the traditional banking system, in the traditional payment systems. And if you're sitting with a banking license in a country like Kenya, you should pay attention to this, because your business is the decisions that you make in the next year is going to make or break your business in the 5 to 10 year time frame. And I'd say the same with M-Pesa. I mean, M-Pesa, they cannot continue to just sit there and ignore and put pressure on everything else. And of course, CBK needs to wake up as well to this. There's a reason why the financial regulators around the world like Bitcoin. There are really, really good reasons why that. There are really good reasons why a lot of financial institutions and a lot of financial regulators are looking to get more and more banks onto blockchains, because that way there's a lot more transparency in what banks are doing. And a lot of the banks, they don't necessarily like all of a sudden having this transparency on them that they get through blockchains, but it'll be forced on them whether they like it or not. And the great thing in Kenya is that there is a wide group of Bitcoin enthusiasts. There's a lot of people looking at how can we apply this here. And I think that chamas are a great example of like the financial innovation that happens at a grassroots level in Kenya. And I think chamas are amazing and awesome, and people looking at technology to support these kind of things can essentially grassroots financial social networks based on existing financial social networks like chamas, and like really build these things up. And I don't think CBK can do anything about it. So it would be much better for them if they actually, took a proactive approach and support this rather than try to stop it. Because M-Pesa is not going to survive as it is right now. They're going to have to make changes. The banks, I mean, just look at all the changes the banks had to do trying to copy M-Pesa after where in the past, like, I don't know what it was like in 2000s, but I would imagine it was difficult opening a bank account in Kenya, right? And then M-Pesa changed all of that, right? Yeah. And then all of a sudden, all the banks, yeah.
I mean, I remember someone telling me he doesn't even remember a world without M-Pesa.
Yeah.
Because
of course
it's difficult to imagine how people used to survive, so I totally agree with you. M-Pesa changed the game, but at the same time, if they are not careful, also, crypto is going to also, change it again, all over again. Mm-hmm. Like you mentioned. So I mean, in your opinion, it seems like, and as we just close, Africa seems to be, the only continent where there's a lot of push and pull with crypto. There's banning, there's restrictions. Are we missing something? in this entire revolution?
I think it's problematic that the regulators are still to this day trying to ban this. There's a great regulatory framework, some regulatory guidelines on how to do this, and I like that there are industry groups who are trying to apply these on a voluntary basis in East Africa, and but they need to learn. I mean, they look at Singapore. Look at what the Monetary Authority of Singapore are doing. They are setting out. They are taking the international framework for crypto, applying it, making it theirs, adopting it to the local market, making it even stricter, because they know that this is bringing all of these companies and all of this innovation to Singapore, and letting Singapore be a financial. I mean, it already is a financial hub, but it's also now a hub for crypto in the region. And you see similar things happening in the UAE, where there are also licensing rules, like flexible licensing rules around crypto coming up. And it really would suit the regulators in what I personally think is like one of the most innovative continents out there, you know, with such an innovative, you know, group of people to be open to this technology, to allow the innovation to happen from below, and not just sit and just, you know, follow on whatever initiatives come in from like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and all of these, or the World Bank, all of these kinds of things. Allow local innovators to build products and grow and turn into, you know, let Nairobi continue to be a fintech innovation center. And to do that, you need to allow this open technology to be there, because it's technology that you know, you could get 2 smart developers in Nairobi with a bit of street smart could set up a fintech, right, using Bitcoin or DeFi or something like that. Allow that innovation to flow. And I think it would be really exciting if they do that. And I think it's going to be hard for them to actually stop this level of innovation happening. But the problem is that, as we often see, is if they, you know, there's a lot of innovation at the small level, but it's just not allowed to flourish and grow if you don't have the okay of the regulators. So I definitely, you know, I'm worried about that. But I'm glad to see that it's not all regulators who are taking that approach. There are definitely regulators who are being very, very open about it. And I just think, you know, Kenyans are amazing, creative, well-educated, you know, highly great, fantastic developers, all of these kinds of things. Just imagine what could come out of Nairobi if you're allowed to take all the small stuff happening at the grassroots level and actually do it at scale. And it feels a little, you know, it's a little bit of a shame that they're not doing that. But hopefully pressures will come from both within and externally for some of these kinds of cases to be able to do this. I really hope, because everyone I dealt with at CBK, I thought they were wonderful, really curious people, pragmatic people, and so hopefully they will open up again soon. Again, I have no information about anything that's going on there. So, but
all right, yeah, we also really hope that they can, you know, enable the same innovation when they, you know, like you mentioned, when they enabled M-Pesa to come into market. Yeah. So now, maybe Pelle, you can tell us where can people find you, and you know, your new projects, and you know, also a bit brief of as we conclude on, you know, where we see you in the next 5 to 10 years with the initiatives.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so on Twitter, you can follow me at Pelle B, so PELLEB. My new company, Notabene, it's notabene.id, notabene.id. And we're really working with crypto companies who are trying to follow the new international guidelines, but also their national guidelines if the regulators have them. We're working with them to be able to do this. And if your regulators are not ready yet, we will help you be ready when they are ready, and also be able to work with international counterparties, with international, be part of the international system. We're happy to talk with entrepreneurs, new startups. We would love to talk with central banks. We talk with central banks and financial regulators all the time. We have great relationships. So if anyone from the CBK is listening, I would love to give an overview about what we're doing, how we make it easy for companies to implement the FATF guidelines, and how that could be applied to a local regulatory level. So we are completely happy to talk with people, both companies, regulators, industry groups, all of these kinds of things. This is a space that's growing very, very strong, and we are working with companies all over the world. So I definitely see this as something that I'm going to be doing the next 5 to 10 years at least. So this is definitely, it's an exciting space, and yeah, I would love the opportunity to come to Kenya and talk with regulators and financial companies and startups on how to approach regulation from a practical, pragmatic standpoint, and solve the specific issues that regulators have, and allow crypto innovators to continue to innovate and do their thing.
All right. Yeah, and I know many people would agree with that. We really need that conversation, or those conversations with the regulators. So at least we see the space, moving forward. So thank you so much, Pelle, for joining us. We really appreciate the time, the brief history of time as well, taking us back to the early days. I think a lot of us needed that kind of information and the foundation of where we are today. We really hope to see you back in Kenya soon. And also looking forward to seeing your products and what you build for the space. Thank you so much, Pelle.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.